I'm ready. John, can you hear us?
I can, yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. I hear you.
Great. Good evening.
Everyone, I'd like to call this August 1st, 2024 meeting of the Planning Board. We have the continuation of 2 public hearings tonight, and we're going to do the POCD first. I don't think it'll take too long. I see a lot of faces here for 6 Opening Hill, so we'll get to that as soon as we can. With that said, we have our consultant, John Guskowski, here. Commissioners Jeff Downs, John O'Connor, Mike Bugda, myself, Carol Snow Chair, John O'Connor, John Hughes, our secretary, Andy Rubin, and our vice chair, Reinhardt. We might be getting joined by Janet Peckinpah and our town planner, Aaron. Aaron is here, Aaron Mannix, and I don't think we need to read the legal notice again because these are continuations.
That's correct.
So we can jump right in with the POCD. Is there anyone who would like to say anything?
Wow, I get to start? Oh, thank you. Alex Province, 917 Boston Post. I know everyone is here probably for a different reason, but POCD is super important. We drafted this when we were driving through Portugal and Spain, watched the meeting from Spain very late. I wanted to say, like Madam Chair, I followed every meeting since I was a little kid, through my parents as well. So I appreciate all the time that you guys have, that you people have put in into the POCD. And POCD, as you know, really drives the next 10 years for the town. So pretty important stuff. I submitted this an email officially for the July meeting. Last month or earlier this month, it was mentioned you had received emails. I printed up a copy just for the effort I went to writing. It was hoping that this might help facilitate reading for those of you that may have missed it. And the intent is just to help with the process. So with so many people here, I'll sit down, but thank you very much.
Thanks for your feedback. We really appreciate it. All along. Every meeting. Great. Is there anyone else here for the plan of conservation and development? Well, we've gotten a lot of really good feedback since our last meeting from a number of big stakeholders within town. And all that information is now posted on the town website. You can get it, the link to it through our agenda. Just click on plan of conservation and development update and see all that information there. John, did you want to add anything or present the beginning of edits?
If that's how you'd like to proceed, yeah, sure. We can go through what we were doing. Obviously, people submitted a lot of stuff in writing, and I just want to thank the members of the public who very thoughtfully went through the plan and added some really interesting and I think worthwhile comments. There were, I think, a number of comments that were more in the realm of emphasis, and I think there was some thought among the commission that I think we tried hard to balance the conservation and the development side of things. But I think perhaps in some of our introductory sections, that balance wasn't perfectly clear or wasn't clear enough. So I think some massaging could be done without really necessarily changing a lot of the substance of the regs. I'm sorry, of the plan. And otherwise, I think it was a lot of the comments were sort of the category of, we noted that you did, some emphasis on tree planting, for instance, but we'd like a little bit more here, a little bit more specificity, calling out some of the cultural touchstones or some of specific conservation practices. So I thought that was all very useful. I would be happy to go through very briefly a couple of the notes that I took during the last public hearing, and just to note some tweaks that we could make to the draft. And then perhaps Aaron and Bob Reinhardt, you want to talk a little bit about some of the language or rewriting of some of the introductory section. But I'd be happy to do that. I'll just go quickly and share my screen if that's all right, Madam Chair.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, so I'm jumping right in. So hopefully you can see my screen. Is that right? Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so going in, I'm jumping right in. I'm already on page 41, and have basically tried to place people's comments in the section of the plan that was relevant. There were some advocates for the bicycle pedestrian section, and so when we cited in the built environment the bicycle pedestrian safety improvement study, there was some argument that we wanted some additional bike ped safety assessments, and that the Safe Routes to School effort was part of this. So I would propose that we would just make sure that we mention the Safe Routes to School effort in the bike ped safety study. And I'm just going to go through and we can, you can ask questions or comment after I'm done, if that's all right.
Sure.
So scrolling forward, the majority of the comments would be relevant towards our policies and action items, which is really in many ways sort of the meat, the to-do list of the plan. So in policy A1, which talks about the downtown redevelopment plan and the Bradley Vision Study, it talks about protecting and enhancing public access to the natural resources in the downtown area. Some folks spoke to the importance of cultural resources, such as the library, which we've obviously used visually and used as a visual touchstone as an important part of downtown. So I think that's an important to add a reference to the library and cultural keystones. In the second section about multimodal transportation plan, I think there is an important part when we talk about maximizing access, connectivity, and safety for bicycle and pedestrian traffic. I think we could more explicitly call out bicycle and pedestrian considerations for development proposals. So it's not only up to the town to consider these things, but when people are proposing to build new things, that we have a strong emphasis on bike and ped safety. A lot in policy D, which is the policy concerning sustainability of the community's natural resources, which a lot of the discussion concerning the natural world and preservation elements was. So in sub-policy 2, which is remediation and restoration of tidal wetlands, there was some discussion specifically about nitrogen loading to Long Island Sound. And I think we had some discussion about nitrogen in a prior draft that we had taken out. I think it's perfectly fine to call it out because there is some specific interest in that as a nutrient loading of concern. So I would propose adding that to that specific reference when we mention water quality degradation and specifically mention nitrogen loading. Later, we did have, as I said before, questions about the tree canopy and public and private management of trees. I think our current policy is to increase active management of trees in the public right of way and within town properties. I think there is some energy around encouraging preservation and management of our private forests, the private forest canopy in Madison. And so perhaps looking into the idea of an ordinance for tree protection. So I think we can add some language there. And then relative to silver certification from Sustainable CT, there is discussion of reducing the carbon footprint, employing sustainable equity principles. And I think there was a request to we had said some mention of agriculture in a prior draft. I think we could add a reference to growing the local agricultural focus as a state sustainability tool, becoming more self-sufficient as a community. So I think we can add a reference there. Going on to policy E, which is about resilience for future economic and environmental challenges. there was some mention of high risk and vulnerable properties. And I think we need to acknowledge perhaps more explicitly that high risk and high value properties, that this is sort of an implicit problem with coastal properties, which is your highest value properties tend to be also your highest risk because they are nearest to the water. So I think looking at that conundrum and looking at ways to mitigate the tax base implications for retreat or de-emphasis on the economic importance of the coastal properties. There was also a reference that I wasn't 100% sure on where to put this, but I put this in, both in the section on environmental and economic resilience. There was discussion about hiring a dedicated grant writer in the community. And obviously different departments have some grant writing authority and responsibility for their own. But I think, looking at the town's overall preparedness and resilience, economic resilience, environmental resilience are both pretty key. And so incorporating the need for some dedicated staff to seek funding for that is an important suggestion. And I think that was it for the specific recommendations. As we incorporate all of those things, and if the commission agrees, what we would do is incorporate those into the action items as well as into the implementation table. So those could be tracked along with the rest of the plan. But those are the key notes that we took from last time based on the public input. So I'll stop there and take any comment from the commission or the public, and then we can talk a little bit about the introduction section.
John.
Good, thank you, John.
Any questions?
Carol, we talked a lot about the census and kind of the
Yeah, that's
the
another.
issues around the timing of the census. And do we have access to more current data around?
Well, in fact, I saw that the Connecticut 2022 census is now we've been told not to use it because they just, there's some inaccuracies.
Right.
I don't know where you're going to use this, John. Maybe there are other sources.
And we really have never considered the summer population.
Yeah, we don't know.
We really don't.
We don't
know.
have numbers
We
for
don't have
that,
numbers around the
which is
summer
surprising.
population, which I think are two things.
Important.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I don't know,
points.
is there a way to get better census information?
Well, yeah, I mean, as the chair said, the most, so our best data comes from the decennial census, because that's 100% count, and that gives the deepest dive. Beyond that, we would have to look at the American Community Survey, which is a 5-year sliding window of a statistical analysis and statistical sample. And as the chair said, we are just discovering that the latest figures from that American Community Survey are inaccurate. Specifically, they found an error about the in-migration and out-migration. They had thought Connecticut had grown by 30,000, but we actually lost about 100,000. So I would be reluctant to rely on much of the American Community Survey right now. So unfortunately, we don't have a decennial census that came out last year. So the data is necessarily going to be a couple of years old, and which isn't great. But I think what we can take some solace in is that I think the trends that we have demonstrated from the aging of the population to the general stability of Madison's population over the last 10, 15, 20 years aren't changing that much, such that we're not making fine grain nuanced recommendations that we're going to have 2,400 kids in the school and therefore we need to open up these other things, not 2,350. We're not in the realm of those specific numbers guiding our decisions. So it's less than ideal, but I think we have made our recommendations based on much longer arc trends. So I don't know. I wouldn't get too wrapped around the axle about it. Is my point.
Yeah, we wondered also, I think, if we could acknowledge that we did the best we could with the data that we have, and as soon as more up-to-date data becomes available, we can make changes if we need to.
Yeah, I think we could put a thoughtful little disclaimer about some of the census stuff in that section. Sure.
Yeah, maybe so.
I think
The census was done pre-COVID, I think COVID really changed the whole dynamic of the people coming to Madison. I really do think there was a big impact to families
Yeah.
coming in, and we still don't know the summer population, which I think is key.
Yeah.
I don't know if we get that way.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think in a lot of ways, unfortunately, we don't necessarily know yet what that means. You know, I think we saw, you know, the COVID demand, and we saw that reflected, I think, most immediately in home prices and demand for you know, homes in more outlying areas away from cities. We didn't necessarily see that in population numbers. And by the time the 2030 census comes around, or the American Community Survey 2024, 2025 gets fixed, it'll be hard to say if that was just a blip or if that was representing a longer term trend. We're just not far away enough from it to make that call. But I think we can add some clarity around that decision in the plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just going to add, there are other measures of population besides the census, like real estate changes. And we don't see huge development in Madison. I think, you know, if it's happening, it's happening underground in tunnels, which I don't think is happening. So I think the main point is that in essence, the document's accurate. It's not going to be more the population double and somebody's hiding it.
Any other comments?
Yeah, the comment I have is that I appreciate what John did as far as weaving what we heard in that first public session into the document. But I know we have a lot of input from the other stakeholders that we sent out, the other commissions and committees. I haven't had a chance to review that. So before we go and start making the changes to the document, I think it would be great if we're able to review all those to get a sense to see, is there a groundswell or is there a definite push with this one? We definitely should put that in there. But just to better understand the totality of the feedback we've received, all we have is one meeting. It was really good.
Yeah.
We got a lot of good input, but it was just that one meeting. And now we have a lot more documentation to read and digest. And I think once we get that, then it'll be easier for us to understand which of the policies, if any, should be changed, modified, whatever we're going to do. But I do think we're going to have to make some changes to beef some up, maybe push them down. But I just want to see everything that's been given to us.
Great.
I agree. Yeah. I don't want to have to go through the work of making changes and then undo all the changes. I like the way you did with the notes. That's actually a great way to do it.
I have one comment. John, I appreciate everything you've done. The rework you've done on this is really impressive to me. I have only one thing that's still bothering me, and that is a reference to the appendix that you carefully inserted at the end of all the restraints or legal mandates that we have to follow. I would like to see in the overview how the policies are used to address them in some manner. Policy A partially addresses mandate 6B or something of that nature. Maybe it can be generically so. I don't really care whether it isn't or isn't. But I think we have an obligation to show how we are addressing all of the things that are driving the documents from the legal perspective, or even from the state, whatever the state is suggesting that we do.
So in terms of the state's compliance or harmony with the state's growth management principles?
Correct.
Okay, so we have, yeah, all right. So I'm just briefly share my screen just so we're on the same page here. So at the end, so here it is. So this is in the section 7 conclusions, there is a discussion about the 6 state growth management principles, which are written in bold. Those are the management principles themselves. And then we have a couple of sentences about how Madison's plan addresses those. But what I think what you're suggesting, would you want specific references?
Because you have the appendix shows everything, but there's no linkage to that.
Okay, so are you talking about a more specific link, or do you mean a physical hyperlink, like a clickable thing?
Whatever you prefer.
Okay. So, okay, yeah, we can look at that. So I'm looking, for instance, the growth management principle here, which is the state's principle, is conserve and restore the natural environment, cultural and historic resources, and traditional rural lands. We do in here, we call out, policy B, and we focuses on this. We call out policy C, preserving historic, rather than policy D.
You're more than halfway there.
Yeah, okay. So just being a little bit more specific.
Right. So you have appendix A, right?
What do we mean by, we have the appendices is mostly maps.
Keep going. Keep going. You had one at the very end. It had all the mandates.
Oh,
Maybe you took it out.
maybe it's not in this version. Was it just the list of the state statute?
All the state statutes, right?
Oh, okay,
You had-
okay.
had an appendix for that.
Okay, okay. I see what you're saying. I think it's not in the version I have up. But I see what you're saying, and we can.
C,
look at
John.
cross- What's that?
It's appendix C.
Huh. So this is my public hearing version.
It is in the public hearing version.
It
The
is?
statutory basis for the
listed.
POCD. So it's 8-23.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Get some reference or link to that so people can understand what some of the key drivers are from the state mandate perspective.
you mean the shall
Yeah, that's-
consider?
Exactly.
I thought we did that in the beginning.
Yeah.
Everything else needs to tie together, right?
Can you reference appendix C in the document?
Well, the statutes are on page 13 in
Right.
the statutory basis is spelled out here. So you're
Body of
looking to
the-
tie those 12.
So yeah, we have, as Aaron said, we have on page 13, there is the discussion of,
So maybe the answer is just that, and this can be viewed in more detail in appendix C, da.
Just refer to-
Cross-referencing.
Yeah, exactly.
Which we
Okay.
do. Yeah, there is a link in the bottom. Is that enough?
Oh, yeah,
So it's
there's some.
notation.
Yeah, there's some.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
link
that kind of stuff.
to the statute.
Exactly. Are we consistent with that? That's the right idea.
yeah, okay, that works.
No other comments from commissioners? We have an attendee with a raised hand. Amy Thomas, Aaron, can you pull her in?
Amy, if you could identify yourself for the record.
Hi, thank you. This is Amy Thomas. I live at 34 River Edge Farms Road. Just following up on some of the comments you took us through, John, specifically policy D and the topic of trees. I don't know all the input that you've accumulated. I just wanted to clarify. I think it isn't so much that we're moving into private forests, but that the focus is really on Madison's tree canopy overall, and just overtly recognizing the need for the town, per the state's guidance to preserve the trees for the overall, ecosystem in the fight against climate change. So yeah, I just wanted to make that point, and not to negate anyone else's comments, but just that I think the intention really is the active preservation of the trees, of the town's trees and overall canopy.
Right. I think that's an excellent point. And I think that the thing that we're trying to figure out, and that you probably heard me struggling a little bit this with my language, is again, so if that is the goal, if that is an important mission for the community to encourage or somehow support the idea of preserving a tree canopy, a healthy forest ecosystem, we have to sort of ask the question how. And so, and so given the toolbox of resources that is at the town's disposal, obviously focusing first on town lands, which the town controls, that's easy thing. But if the town doesn't control the land, which it doesn't in the case of private property, what do we do? So is it just public education and encouragement? Is it some kind of incentive program for anything from like lending arborist support or giving people tax breaks for forest blocks or something like that? Or third, is it some kind of requirement, some kind of regulation, policy, ordinance that would require preservation and maintenance? So we have to sort of look at that menu of things that a town can actually do to hit that goal. I think calling it out is an important thing, but then trying to figure out what do we do about it is the trick of the plan.
Yeah, I would say yes. That all sounds great. And if it's appropriate to include that level of specificity, fantastic.
And that's the balance that the commission has to strike. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
See any other hands raised, Erin?
No, not remotely. I don't believe Maria has anyone in her room.
Do hand signals. See her.
No, I don't.
Nope.
I don't see anybody with their hands raised.
No, she's saying.
Great.
So,
go ahead,
just to pick up on what you had mentioned earlier, Bob did, and I shared with the commission some draft language of just kind of taking a swing at rewriting that front executive summary, as John suggested, that front load of more information and maybe a little more succinct statements. And so that, again, you can close the public hearing this evening if you don't have additional comments. Take your time to review what we have. I do understand that the Board of Selectmen will likely have this on their agenda in August. There is an interest to endorse the plan as well, which I don't believe the hearing needs to stay open for their endorsement, only for comments. So I think you're safe to proceed in closing the hearing.
That's my understanding too.
Additional information.
Yeah, and so we can continue to work on minor edits, compromising minor, nothing substantial, because the document has been approved by the Regional Planning Commission already in its public hearing draft version, and we have gotten good feedback since our July 11th meeting. So I think that we can maybe figure out among ourselves how we want to break down the information and
Just talk about what I wrote in the public, or we should close the meeting first and then touch on that?
You're welcome to talk.
I think
I think it's nice to
Okay.
share some of
So-
your thoughts now
so
so
y'all
that
got
everybody can digest.
a document from Aaron Day, which was my initial take at rewriting the executive summary, because I thought the executive summary was, it just had too much in it, and it wasn't summarizing the intent and the content of the POCD. I gave that, so that was my first take at it. You see there's some rough notes in it and all as well. I gave it to Carol, she had some good comments on the human environment and tweaking that. I also gave it to John Morgan, and he had a lot of really good comments, which I just haven't had time to pull all together.
Okay.
And what I'm thinking now is just waiting to get all the other, get a chance to read everything else.
And then roll it all in.
what I think is that executive summary needs to be very short. It's a 3-minute read. And it's like, this is what this does. It's why we're doing it. It's where we're trying to go. It's where we are. If you're interested, read on. If not, close it, go.
We're going to the implementation.
Go to the implementation, skip the implementation table. But I think the original one was just a little too dense. It was hard to get through and we give you the idea of what we're trying to achieve. I saw some of that in the public hearing. They missed some of the things we were trying to do because we didn't yell at it in the first paragraph. Very bleak, basically. So I want to look that back up. So that's why it's there. It's not intended to be what I think we should. It's a rough draft, just to get an idea if y'all have the appetite to take this up. And then I think the feedback I got so far really made it that much better. I need to incorporate this. It actually would be better. Yeah,
Even better.
better. I just want to let you know.
If I'm allowed.
think so.
So will the public have another opportunity? So if I'm understanding correctly, after you process some of this input, you may make changes. Will we have access to those changes in case we were to like, theoretically change in a way that you might not like before
I
it's
think it's
presented
gonna be,
to
first of all, I think
BOS?
it's gonna be more additive than subtractive. Based on the feedback we're getting. Aaron, my understanding is that we would like to adopt the plan of conservation and development at our September 6th meeting. It is the first.
That was, your first meeting in September was the, it's the 5th of September would be, yes, so the thought is that you can make some edits and bring them back. Once the hearing is closed, the hearing is closed, and the commission is then making edits in response to the feedback they received. It's not an ongoing, continuous back and forth.
Would our next step then be, as you present to the Board of Select people, that we could then have public input into it at that point?
We've presented to them 2 or 3 times actually, and so I think their next meeting is to make sure among themselves they feel comfortable endorsing it.
Even after what could potentially be substantial.
No, these aren't gonna be, this is taking what's already in there and restructuring it so it's more digestible and easier to read, basically, as I like to say, getting to the answer. Right up front, here's what you're reading, here's what you're looking at, kind of vision, strategy, plan, and then all the details are behind it. It's just rearranging.
Let me rephrase it. If, for example, the suggestions that I made personally don't make it on, I would like them to have been made, for example.
And actually, that's a good point. It's not everything will go in because we have to
Sure.
balance it and see how we want to emphasize different issues and policies and goals and.
Would it be helpful if we explained, or Aaron explained, the process for getting this approved and finalized and stuff?
Sure.
Because
I mean, I did a little homework about
If I do it,
post-public hearing, what happens?
so how does this become official? When is?
You adopt it.
We adopt. No vote, just we
You, yes, by vote
By
of the
us.
commission.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
So
That's what I mean.
there are
That's-
mandatory referrals that are required. There's a public comment period of a minimum of 65 days. You have gone well beyond that in posting the document ahead of your public hearing. You are required to hold a public hearing. As I said, make your regional referrals to the local COG. The referral to the Board of Selectmen, the legislative body, has the option of holding a public hearing if they wish. They're not required to. And the statutes have the legislative body endorse or reject. They may also provide comments. The commission has gotten comments from some members, and those I think are now at your discretion to incorporate, as they represent the whole of your community. This is your entire community's document, not just necessarily each individual's feedbacks. If the Board of Selectmen does not endorse the plan, then it requires a 2/3 vote from the Planning and Zoning Commission to adopt the plan.
So the public, what we can do now is the public input part. Once we close that, then your part is done.
Should we keep it open for another session? Are we in a rush?
We're kind of.
It's months late, it's months late, it's
We've
months
been
late.
working on it for 2 years,
Yeah,
so.
this is,
I I do want to say though, Alex, that it is a living document.
Yeah.
And that it, it can be updated, it can be changed if there's something that we really missed. I mean, I actually thought of this week when Vermont had its second 1,000-year storm event, and I thought, wow, that came out of nowhere. How do we get ready next time? So, yeah, I mean, I think that you can feel free to continue to have input.
Okay.
And, yeah, and it's possible that not everything in your good
It's still.
review is gonna get in there, but.
No, I appreciate that, but I know some of the other groups, that I'm involved with as well, like EPAC, for example, it'd be nice to see what it finally turns out to be
We will be posting it when it's adopted, so it'll be available.
after it's adopted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a kind of nice closure for us, and then doesn't mean though that you can't continue.
I'm sure it's the next one. Be done with it, but it's just it's something as it affects the town for the next decade, it's worth, in 2 years, you put a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah, and as I said, as we get new data, on like both environmental data or population
Census
data,
data, sure.
we're gonna probably need to update.
Okay.
According to budget amendments.
I'm just thinking that once it's adopted, if we see the need to update it, we would just make a motion to open a discussion on that and start.
Okay, so that's good.
Yeah,
There's a
so-
legislative
Okay.
process to do
Well, all
that.
right, so which is it, you make it seem easy, Bob.
Right, this is our round. I would also add that at your meeting in September, the commission will be openly discussing the changes that are, anything that is proposed, the edits to the document to reflect public comment. So that doesn't happen behind closed doors.
No, it's not
That's
ex parte.
here
at.
that's here at the meeting to kind of go over that and why you've made the changes.
Just one last sort of visit before it gets finalized would be nice, but I can appreciate limitations. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
In that case, could I have a motion to close the public hearing for the conservation development? Mike and seconded by John. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, public hearing is closed for the POCD. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your input. Thank you, attendees.
Thank you, John G.
Thank you, John.
Congratulations and thank you to the public.
Yeah, thank you to the public. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a continuation of the public hearing for 24-10, 6 Opening Hill Road. This public hearing is continued from July 16th, 2024. And what we would like to do is, we were in the midst of public comments, or maybe nearing the end of public comments, I don't know. So we'll continue with the public comments first. And I just want to remind everybody, without reading through the whole procedural directions, that if you have already spoken, maybe wait until everyone else has had a chance to speak. We encourage new information. You don't have to keep repeating everything over and over again. Anything else anyone else wants to add to the process? Erin, did you have anything to add to the process for tonight's continuation?
No, it was my understanding that it was open as the continuation to allow the public to get as much, so that the commission can hear and the applicant can hear from the,
And then we also want to give
those.
the applicant the opportunity to respond to a lot of information that you all provided us at the previous meeting and tonight. So do we have anyone who would like to come forward?
Yes, so we did have a sign-up sheet. If anyone did not sign a sign-up sheet, you are welcome to do so. There are additional sheets in the hallway. I think what we'll do, there are some names, I was just going to go down the order, but there are some names who have already had an opportunity in the hearing to speak, so we're just going to kind of shuffle and allow folks who have not yet spoken to go first, just in the interest of time. I think the first one we have is Robert Scungio.
Yes, 66 Indigo Trail.
And Robert, we would ask that you please go up to the
It's gonna be
podium.
So quick, it'll be quicker for me to say what I'm gonna say. To save time for the board, I'd like to waive any further comments I have for either Bruce Lockhart or Glenn Phillips. I'd just like to tell you, I'm not in favor of this. I think it's an unsafe condition, road-wise and access-wise, that I've experienced living on this particular site for 16 years, but I've been in this town for 40 years, and I've traveled down here. It's an unsafe condition, so I'm against it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you mind stating your name and address again, please?
Sure. Robert Scungio, SCUNGIO, 66 Indigo Trail, Madison, Connecticut.
Thank you. Thank you. By the way, can everyone hear okay without microphones? Yes.
Right. We do have a microphone
There
if
is one
if
here.
there are folks who are online or in the other room who are having trouble hearing. Jim Hanrahan of 105 Opening Hill Road.
Hi, I just want to say that we've owned this property for 40 years. It was a nice quiet country road, and we're totally against this nonsense thing here. And it's absolutely no benefit to the neighborhood or the town in general. That's all I have to say. Everything else I want to say has been covered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellen Levin, 48 Indigo Trail.
Thank you. My name is Ellen Fames Levin. I live at 48 Indigo Trail. It's actually 3 doors down from the property. And within the 500, it's 500 feet circle that they need to talk to. Anyhow, I have some medical issues that make it hard for me to talk sometimes, so my husband may have to take over for me, if you'll let me. I agree with all of those who have already spoken and written to you against the special use exception request. Full disclosure, first, I'm a lifelong amateur artist and crafter. I fell in love with art as a child when my mother would take me to the Art Institute of Chicago several times a year. Second, the environment is extremely important to us. In fact, we produce twice as much recycling as the 1 to 1.5 bags of trash per week. Third, my younger sister had Down syndrome and certainly had learning disabilities. She lived for well over a decade in Misericordia home run by the Sisters of Mercy. For decades, my husband and I have continued to support Misericordia home through our small family charitable foundation. In other words, I'm well aware of the Mercy Center and its history. When we bought our home in 2001, our realtor certainly did not include any comps south of the Post Road because Mercy Center is certainly not a valid comp. I actually called the Mercy Center yesterday. The person I spoke to told me that absolutely no weddings, galas, or other large fundraising events similar to those proposed under this application are allowed. Such activities are actually forbidden. In fact, Mercy Center is a place for reflection, small meetings, education, and spiritual exploration. Quite the opposite of this Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation. As many of our neighbors and those in the community have already stated, we deliberately purchased our home and invested in the Madison community because of the peace, quiet, and serenity Madison had to offer, even though it was a much longer commute for my husband. At first blush, I support the areas that the foundation cares to support. However, I'm against the proposed special use exception. Frankly, I don't see what the applicant is basing their request on, not to mention the moving target of the application. I have attended every call and meeting since the first notification. During that initial Zoom call, Ms. Knopfick talked about the possibility of even demolishing the 1700s farmhouse. I talked to her about the impact to the wetlands, the hiking trail, overall environmental impact, and lack of proper well and septic issues. The Tremaine Foundation submitted experts to analyze the traffic, noise, and light pollution impact of their proposed uses of 6 Opening Hill Road. Analyses are just guesses about what life will be like for us. If you approve the special use exception, if you approve the special use exception, we can argue all day about theirs and our, whose guesses, theirs or ours, are more reflective of reality. But we actually don't need to discuss guesses. I've lived it. The previous owner of 6 Opening Hill Road held gala events with many attendees. I don't really know the exact count, but I'm pretty sure they were less than 150 people. The fact is that these events were very disruptive to our neighborhood. For days before the events, there were commercial vehicles and workers setting up. During the events, there was lots of traffic, including valets with golf carts parking on both sides of Indigo Trail. In fact, it was difficult for us to get to our own house. I personally called the Madison Police Department and notified them of the safety hazard, because there wasn't enough room for any fire truck or emergency vehicle or ambulance to get down our street. The police came and told the valets to park on one side of the road. For the next event, the cars were parked on one side of the road, but then they were parked further down Indigo Trail and up Kachina Way. The events were noisy, including lights, loud music, and loud conversation. During the events that were at night, there were lights that lit up the neighborhood. After the events, the cleanup and tear down took days to complete. Again, with commercial vehicles and workers driving to and from the site. The impact on our neighborhood and my home was severe. The Tremaine Foundation may likely claim that they will have behave much better than the previous owner, even with the best of intentions. There are things that are simply not in their control. Attendees to their gala and events may not want to park at any other location and take a shuttle. Some people might try to follow the rules, but might change their minds when they see a line of people waiting for buses. Some people may arrive late and find the buses are no longer running. The Tremaine Foundation claims that they will tow cars that park on Indigo Trail, but I really doubt that can happen. Regardless of the obvious issues of inconveniencing their guests, it's not legal to park on Indigo Trail. It's not illegal to park on Indigo Trail. Again, history and my own experience shows that they simply will not be able to control these factors.
You're over 5 minutes. I just want to.
I'm almost done,
Great.
kindly. And we're very close by the site. So in case you have a choice between guesses and historical facts, it seems like an easy choice to me. Now, the current owners, to quote Joni Mitchell, will pave paradise and put up a parking. I urge you to consider I urge you to consider the worst case realistic scenario, not the rosy picture that's presented. Lastly, the town of Madison is expected to forfeit the tax revenue and increase the burden on our own town services and infrastructure. The rest of us and our neighbors will have to fund the lost tax revenue. And there is no written or contractual commitment by the foundation to the town of Madison to make up for the loss of revenue and increase of expenses. I don't believe your committee is under any obligation to approve this plan. So for all of these reasons, I respectfully ask you to reject the whole proposal before it's too late. Thank you for your time and your work.
Before we move on, I just want to let everyone know that the previous sign-up sheet from the last evening, if your name was on that, please put your name on this evening's list because some people may be here, some people may not be, and I don't want to have confusion. So there are plenty of papers out in the hallway and I'll grab them as we get through this list, but please make sure that you do sign up again if you hadn't been heard last time. The next on the list I have, I believe it's Donna Scungio. For you?
I'm Doreen Scungio, but
Oh,
no, I
Doreen,
haven't,
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
I just
I
signed up.
couldn't read your.
That's okay. Good enough. No, I'm fine. We can just move on. I have nothing. I'm not in favor of it. That is for sure. There's a number of things, living in Madison for 40 years, okay? I want to just say this. I didn't say I wanted to, but either way. We've been going through this for many, many years. In 1979, let's just do a little history here, okay?
Could I just stop
Sure.
and ask for your full
6
name and address?
Doreen Scungio.
And if you are going to say something,
Yes, I will.
thank you. Sounds like you're saying
It's
something.
an Italian way. I'd like to just speak, first of all, I would wish that we could all hit this out of the park, all of us. And what I mean by hitting it out of the park is have honesty, integrity, transparency, and trust. Okay? That would be something that each and every one of us could meet and agree on.
I'm sorry, could you say your name and address
Okay,
again?
sure.
Please.
Doreen Scungio, Scungio. And I'm at 66 Indigo Trail. Oh, okay. I've been in Madison for 40 years, over in Heatherwood. 16 years here on Indigo Trail, and I was a general contractor for lot 49 at 132. 1979, this town of Madison was sued for polluting the water, for the inland wetlands and for the rivers and water courses. In 84, I built lot 49. And they were sued for $60,000. Red flags went up everywhere. So anybody who did build at that point, okay, had to kind of jump through hoops to be sure that everything was made right, because obviously the eyes were on them. Whose fault it was the actual, and I'm not blaming anyone, but the town, inland wetlands, they went ahead, in Heatherwood especially, okay, put the septics too close. I lived on the west branch of the Hammonasset River. I had to have my house, okay, and septic minimum of 210 feet from there. I either had to come in with 2,500 yards of bank and gravel, come in with a galley system, but it had to be a sophisticated system. Be that as it may, we got through that. That was in 79. In 1998, we had Griswold Airport. And the reason I'm saying this to you, as planning and zoning people, okay, we know what we went through with Griswold Airport. It took us almost 10 years to get through that. And it cost the town and the residents, okay, thank God for Audubon and for the, I think it was public-private trust land, okay, to come in and help the residents to save the birds, the wildlife, whatever it was, okay? Everybody stepped up, but the residents are the ones who really paid for that, okay? Because what you could have done from the beginning, from Griswold, okay, is you could have purchased that property for far less. But because of the mistakes that were made, okay, obviously, we got through that.
Could you focus on?
The reason I'm saying this is the focus, okay? We keep going through the same thing, and everybody, every resident here goes into their pocket legally, okay? I have nothing against the Tremaine Foundation. Their legal bills get written off. Let's talk about Legend now. Legend was for 3 or 4 years. Those people personally had to pay for that. just like we personally have to pay for this. I have a legal attorney here, okay? Just like everyone else needs somebody to represent them, or they have to stand up and speak. So my question to you is, at the end, when they turned that around for Downs family, Keith Ainsworth finally, obviously, Chris was the attorney for Faith Whitehead, and then obviously it turned around and she got someone else. But be that as it may, I don't really care who the attorneys are, who not. The whole point of it is they had to go all the way to Superior Court or Supreme Court, and that's a time and expense for each person. We're doing the same thing. I'm just gonna say this to you, okay? You have rivers there, you have inland wetlands, you have people that are used to privacy, you have Guilford and Madison. Where are the reports that inland wetlands is to approve before application is even to be looked at? We haven't seen any of that. Okay, so inland wetlands runs the show, and I don't mean this with any disrespect. I called the state, and I spoke to the head of the state, and they say town of Madison or any town has to abide by what the state. Okay, you haven't showed us one thing on the septic or inland wetlands or the rivers. And now, not only you, okay, the Tremaine Foundation has 6 acres there. Some of it, which is a very small part, okay, is in Guilford. Where's Guilford? Mr. McGee says you haven't applied anything to Guilford. These things count. Okay, I've been there, spoken to him, knowing, because I know what I went through, and believe me, I have the utmost respect for Madison. John Phillips was inland wetlands, okay, we had Jack. There was a whole bunch of great people that work hard, and you do work hard. But you have to understand, once something takes place, it's hard to take it back. So I'm not in favor of it, not because I have any disrespect for their foundation, okay? But this was residential, it's been residential. It shouldn't have ahead, and it's not doing anything for our town. That's how I feel. I don't want to take up any more than 5 minutes. For someone who wasn't speaking, I don't.
Kathy McMahon, 33 Winter Hill Road.
Evening. My name is Kathy McMahon. I live at 33 Winter Hill Road. We've lived there for 40 years. Both of our kids graduated through the Madison school system. We love living in Madison, the quality of life until now, the security that our residential neighborhoods would be protected from commercial development. I'm deeply opposed to the current request for a zoning special exemption permit for the Tremaine Foundation. Over the last several meetings, we have witnessed much emotional testimony from citizens and neighbors in opposition to this position. Tonight, I'd like to focus on the following items, which are taken directly from the regulations for these special exceptions. Section 4.1. Special exceptions are permitted if they are appropriate, harmonious, and desirable within a district. I would conclude that based on the outpouring of negative comments from the neighborhood and town citizens, this condition is not met. Section 4.4. The public conveyance and welfare will be substantially served, and the appropriate use of the neighboring property will not be substantially served or permanently injured. There's no benefit to the neighborhood or the town of Madison for this proposal. There's no economic benefit to the town. Property taxes will be eliminated for the site. The site will be not open to the general public, but rather by invitation only. Surrounding property values will decrease. The Economic Development Commission support for this proposal is just a sham. The studies cited are irreverent. The blatant conflict of interest between a board member of that commission and his board chair of the Shoreline Arts Alliance, which is now receiving monetary support from the Tremaine Foundation, renders the economic development support invalid. This project is not going to put Madison on the map. Not that any of us want that. That's why we're here. I grew up in Fairfield. I love Connecticut. but they'll be the wrong reasons given the controversial nature of the architect and the founder of much already has been published. Section 4.4.2. All special exception permits may be granted subject to conditions and safeguards required to preserve public health, safety, convenience, welfare, and property values of surrounding areas. The application fails on all these points. Health and safety, the traffic study findings indicate that it's currently an unsafe road despite a posted 25-mile-per-hour limit. Vehicles going 39 miles per hour for 85% of them. I travel that road daily and I have to slow down for that section of the road. I cannot possibly safely drive 39. The road is narrow, the sight lines are poor, there are no sidewalks, there is no street lighting. My son ran through there when he was on cross country. People are walking with their dogs by themselves, running and so forth. The traffic study suggests adding guardrails at the bridge, making that span even narrower. Cutting down 100-plus-year-old trees, removing the shrub hedge to the north of the driveway, adding signage and changing egress traffic patterns to the property on all which will dramatically affect the current aesthetics of the area. In addition to vehicular safety issues, as I said, foot traffic on Opening Hill will become increasingly unsafe. The public welfare will be compromised for the neighborhood as evidenced by the outpouring of emotional stress this proposal has already generated. Property values of surrounding homes will diminish. This is undisputable. It's common sense. The studies provided by the experts the foundation has paid for are worthless. The properties used as comparison are not comparable at all. All of the properties cited, like the country school, have been in existence like in 1955, long before the current homeowners moved in. Comparing sales over the last several years of these homes is really irrelevant and misleading. All these neighbors brought these homes eyes wide open as to the schools located in their neighborhood. Not the case for the neighbors of 6 Opening Hill. They bought into a residential neighborhood with the trust that this would not change. This trust that every homeowner in Madison has taken for granted is now in peril. Regarding the applicant, there's no hardship here on this part. There's no compelling reason they need to be on this site. There's no art. They sold it. They sold this property and the surrounding acres 30 years ago to a developer who put up homes that were bought by many people here in this room. They were bought in good faith that the residential character of the neighborhood be maintained. They deserve the quiet enjoyment of the residences. This application is a bad fit for the neighborhood, a bad fit for the town of Madison, and if we're honest with themselves, for the foundation themselves. Here's a thought. Why don't they use some of their millions of endowment, buy a suitable piece of property, and put it up to appropriate building that suits their needs? No busing of visitors, no restrictions on number of events, no outraged neighbors. We've heard over and over that the foundation wants to do right by the neighbors and satisfy their plans, to satisfy their concerns, but this seems a falsehood, because each meeting we have seen changes to the plans. First, no new construction, now 12 new additional parking spaces, an upgraded additional driveway, a new larger engineered septic system. Who knows what else will be presented. In addition, I, like many people in this room, really don't know what the pending application is really for. They say gatherings, on-site residences, permanent residency, experienced guests, events, corporate retreats, each of these having their own special limitations and restrictions, which at the end of the day will become meaningless because no one will be able to monitor or enforce.
You're over 6 minutes.
Okay, I'm concluding now. I just need a drink of water. My mouth is dry. I apologize.
We won't have that.
So in conclusion, the foundation was sincere about, if the foundation was sincere about being a good neighbor and doing the right thing, they would not have presented multiple ever-changing, confusing applications. If they really wanted to do the right thing, they would not have wasted our time with the experts that have the information that they've presented. And they wouldn't be pulling the wool over our eyes by proposing unrealistic, impractical, unforeseeable solutions to the many concerns everyone has brought up.
And finally, if they really wanted to do the right thing, they would withdraw this application, select a more appropriate site to suit their needs and the proposal in an appropriate use of the site and a bad fit for everyone. I urge this board, and I appreciate all the work you've spent on it and all the work that we don't even see reading everything, to listen to the taxpayers and citizens of Madison. Deny this application, deny the application in its totality, please. Thank you.
Jeff Allen, 138 Nortontown Road.
I live at 138 Nortontown Road, which is 56 seconds from the driveway, the Tremaine's driveway from the end of my driveway. I lived there 67 years, so I'm pretty familiar with the road. This thing just doesn't fit. Road is wrong. There isn't anything that isn't wrong with this proposal, nothing. And that's all I have to say. I want to share my time with Bruce. He and I talked earlier. He has everything that I was going to say. And he's got pictures and I don't, so.
Alex Province, 917 Boston Post
Aaron,
Road.
I've already spoken. I apologize. That was for the POCD.
Got it. Thank you. John Soderstrom, 115 Opening Hill Road.
My name is John Soderstrom. My wife and I live at 115 Opening Hill. We've lived there for about 25 plus years. But the reason I want to speak is because a number of pieces of evidence have been offered by the Tremaine Foundation in the guise of environmental studies. Just by way of background, that's my area of expertise. I did my PhD at Northwestern, wrote my dissertation on how to conduct these kinds of impact assessments. I worked at Oak Ridge National Laboratory for 15 years doing environmental impact assessments, a whole range of different types of technologies, ranging from nuclear power plants to hazardous waste assessments. Published 2 books, 5 book chapters, and I don't even know how many scientific articles in professional journals. The reason I say that is simply to say that the information that they have provided and the methods by which they have done it are meaningless. And if you are doing a disservice to the town of Madison, as it's already been stated by the woman just previously, what they've done with the property value assessment is crazy. I mean, it's a meaningless thing unless you're trying to buy property close to the schools. Otherwise, it's a totally meaningless set of data. The second point I wanted to make, I promise I'm going to be short, was that when you cite a disruptive intervention in a stable residential area without any social, economic, or environmental benefit, there's a price to be paid. And that price is a reduction in property value. For them to argue that property values won't go down is misleading, disingenuous, and without a scintilla of evidence. Every study I've ever conducted, everyone, it always goes down. It has to go down. And you can shake your head, you can disagree with that, but I have a bibliography I'm willing to share with anybody that demonstrates that that is a demonstrable data. Okay. Point over. Second point is, at the last meeting, there was concern about, or where there was some discussion about the restrictive covenants that were on the Indigo Trails properties. And there was some discussion about whether that impact or whether those were indeed binding to 6 Opening Hill. This is the bigger point is this, that when Mr. Tremaine sold off that property, he put those restrictive covenants in because he had a vision for what the neighborhood was supposed to look like, which, by the way, it does. They have followed it beautifully. To say that now we're suddenly going to disregard all of that with respect to 6 Opening Hill and say, sure, it applies to everybody else, but not to us,
This is the bigger point. The bigger point is that it is totally at odds with the Tremaine's own vision. And for you not to see that is nuts. I mean, it's so self-evident. Last point. Question for the commission, because it was stated by the attorney for the Tremaines and implied strongly on a couple of other occasions that you actually do not have the authority to turn down their application. Is that true? That's a question. Do you have the authority to deny this petition? Or is it, as he said, you must approve it?
We can deny it, we have to give a good reason why we do.
Jonathan Killam, 56 Indigo?
Killam, yeah.
It's an M? Thank you.
This was my first time speaking. I moved here with my wife about 10 years ago. We have 3 young girls. And so for me, in our neighborhood, there are not a lot of young kids, but that is my big concern about here. Maybe all of you have had young children, some of you maybe even have grandchildren. So the idea of the increased traffic coming through to me is one of my big concerns. The environmental issues, and I agree with everything that everybody else has said. It's very disappointing that this is even coming up. I mean, everybody in the community is against it, pretty much, right? And you represent us or who else. So we have our trust in you. It's a big job, but we hope you make the right decision.
Mark Nadell, 42 Old Schoolhouse Road.
Hi, you guys doing? Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. Here are our concerns. I do live 42 Old Schoolhouse Road, which is pretty close to the proposed foundation. I can tell you that it's definitely a safety concern. I see people all the time walking their dogs, running, bicycling. In fact, there was one time I was on my way to go play tennis, driving down that road, and I saw someone was hit by a cyclist was hit by a vehicle. It's just not safe. So that's like my immediate point from personal experience. But I think maybe the larger point is there's a statute for a reason. It's to protect the community's rights. And the community has so beautifully articulated why they're so concerned about having this foundation kind of infiltrate our neighborhood. It seems to me that there's no valid reason for giving, as it states here, a special exception. Why? For whose benefit? Certainly not for ours. I think there are statutes and laws created for reasons, protect individuals' communities' rights, and I see no reason why our rights should be infringed upon by this proposal. So I am highly against you guys approving it, and we hope you do the right thing and reject it. Thank you.
Heather Rizzo, 28 Kachina Way.
Hi, I'm Heather Rizzo, 28 Kachina Way. I'm gonna with my time to my husband. I just want to go on record that I oppose the application at 6 Opening Hill. I'm gonna give my husband my time because he was cut short from last week.
Is that okay with you? Yeah, okay. First, thank you guys, appreciate it. Thank you, Heather, for letting me speak on your behalf. First time in our relationship I've been allowed to do that. A lot of people ask. I will, I've got a lot to say. I got 5 minutes, I got lots to do. Obviously, first, I want to thank you guys for everything you guys are doing. This has been an enlightening process. It's been an unfortunate one, but enlightening. A couple of things just to highlight. A lot of the things I want to say have already been said, so I'll try and kind of gloss over those. But the one thing that I did want to bring up that has been brought up already, but I want to bring it up from another perspective is, well, let me just start with this. 2 questions. Is the public convenience and welfare substantially served? I've heard this board ask numerous occasions for the applicant to supply information about that.
I've yet to see any. I don't believe anybody here has. And I think it's been clear that it is not just, as the attorney had put it, served, it has to be substantially served. And I haven't heard of it being served, much less substantially. Matter of fact, we've heard numerous examples of why it will actually cost us more money from the perspective of our tax rolls, from the perspective of their own application, requesting additional town resources, fire and police to support the applicant's activities. So that's one thing. The second issue related to that is that in a town of almost 18,000 people, the dearth of testimony in support of this application is a deafening silence. And that's something that should be taken into account in terms of the benefit to our community as well. We also heard about how the Madison Economic Development Commission, this is something the applicant's attorney pointed out, that we were getting down on that. Well, we're not getting down on that until we found out that obviously there is what appears to be a serious conflict of interest and a possible violation of our town ethics code in regard to the actual granting of, I think it was $20,000 to the Shoreline Arts Council. Now, that in and of itself discredits the information that was applied by the council. Having said that, what's more disconcerting is the actions of the applicant to take that action and not disclose that information to anyone in the public. So it goes to the ethics and integrity of this application, and that's consistent with what we've seen throughout this process where the applicant continues to change. There was commitments to no construction by the attorney and the applicant, and now we've heard there's 12 parking spaces. So what else is going to change? And how often is it going to change? So these are questions that we've not heard clarity on. There's also some question of, oh, this might help Madison's reputation. I would be very careful on who we get in bed with in terms of a town, especially given some of the individuals who've been affiliated with this problem. So I think that's something to consider as well. The applicant's application, they've recently submitted a traffic study. The traffic study makes no reference to pedestrian or bicycle traffic at all. Doesn't even reference it. Doesn't reference accidents, doesn't analyze it, had nothing to say about it. Yet our own POCD, we just heard how important bicycle and pedestrian traffic is to the next 10 years of our town planning. Yet this study that was submitted has no reference to any of that and appears to not consider it to be important. And it's putting people's lives and their health and safety in jeopardy. So that's another point. The other point in addition to that is the valuation analysis. Now, everyone's talked about this. Obviously, the analysis itself is, as has been pointed out, ridiculously flawed. I actually spoke to Mr. Nadeau, the appraiser who submitted the application, some of the analysis prior, to ask him on our behalf to see if he would be willing to do an assessment. And well, what he said to me was, well, it would take months, a very long time to do anything of any real nature, of any value. And somehow he managed to pull together something very quickly in support of the applicant, surprisingly enough. So having said that, his actual analysis also points out, even as flawed as it is, that there's a diminution in property values of 3 to 12%. I was sort of surprised to see that in the median home prices. I did my own analysis using the same methodology at the Mercy by the Sea, which has recently been submitted. And my analysis, based on the same methodology, shows also a 12% diminution in property values, consistent with what everybody here actually just knows, because it's common sense. So I'll be submitting that to you guys too, so you'll have that information. So you'll have another piece of evidence that proves that there's another, not only the applicant's analysis, but also our own analysis, which will show that properties will in fact be diminished. Throughout this process also, the applicant has highlighted the number of comparable sites. I've heard about the Glass House 100 times. I can't believe that's even remotely seen as a comp to what we're dealing with. The Glass House sits on 50 acres of property. It's on a straight level street with double yellow line and shoulders. And it's a major connector, almost similar to probably what 79 is. Barbary Hill Farms is on 17 acres off the Post Road. Mercy by the Sea is on 30 acres. And we have a list of all the other properties that they gave us as comps. Those range from 12 to 80 acres. So putting something similar to that, we're trying to compare it to what's on 6 Opening Hill is unfounded. In addition, all these other locations, there is no adjacent neighborhood. And that's one of the unique situations. And that's why we have this process, is to analyze how it affects the specific situation. These other places do not. So that's why we're going to be uniquely affected in a very, very negative way. Just to summarize, and sort of been said, the application has failed to demonstrate that the people or the town of Madison will substantially be served by this application. Furthermore, I believe we've demonstrated how this application is incongruous with the nature and characteristics of our neighborhood, how it adversely affects the safety of our families, and how it will substantially and permanently impair the values of our properties. Therefore, we implore you to prioritize the protection of our neighborhood and our property values and deny this application in its entirety. Thank you.
Bonnie Hyatt, 27 Indigo Trail.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Hyatt and I live at 27 Indigo Trail for the past 14 years or so. And I agree with everything that's been said. I think the property valuation study is ridiculous. One of the differences between the Tremaine property and the country school where my children were students for 11 years is the moment we put our application in, we were invited to use the fields and the playgrounds. And that's a different situation that benefits the neighborhood. This is the thing for private events that we're never going to be able to go there because we won't be invited. Another problem or another study that was brought up at the last meeting was the new parking lot and how because of the grading of the property, nobody from Indigo Trail will be able to see that parking lot. That is true if you're lying face down on Indigo Trail. You can directly look over that hill and see this new parking lot, which is directly across the street from my house. The third thing I'd like to say is yesterday, my daughter and I were playing volleyball in our front yard. And the proverbial ball rolled into the street. And my daughter said to me, I hope I don't get hit by a Tremaine bus. Because these buses will not be able to turn around in the driveway of the Tremaine property. And there is going to be no one to prevent them from going down Indigo Trail past my house, turning up Kachina Way around my house, and getting back out to Opening Hill. Thank you for your consideration.
James Laird, 6 Kachina Way. We just need to unmute. There you go, Maria.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Good evening. My name is James Laird. I live at 6 Kachina Way with my wife and one-year-old son. Our family just moved into our house, which is immediately adjacent to 6 Opening Hill, just 10 months ago. Before living in Madison, we lived in New Haven for 5 years during our medical residencies. And before that, we lived in Manhattan for 10 years during college and med school. We love New Haven, we love New York, but there's a reason why we decided to move out of those cities, and specifically why we decided to move into this neighborhood in Madison. We wanted to move to our neighborhood as it's a quiet residential neighborhood where we could envision our son someday riding his bike safely down the street, and where we could come home at the end of a long work week where we give everything to our patients and then relax without being subject to the noise and bustle of public spaces. We didn't move here to live right next door to a business headquarters, which holds 25-person gatherings and regular 150-person galas, and which draws constant traffic. We would have stayed in New Haven or in New York if that was remotely tolerable for us. It's been said by our neighbors that it's common sense that property values would go down, and our experience as recent home buyers is a testament to this. If we had known our house was going to be right next to an event center, we wouldn't have bought it. And I suspect other people would feel the same. We bought our house hoping that we'd be able to live here for the next 30 years. So we're extremely concerned about the potential for the proposed activities expanding by a small amount each year. It's particularly disturbing that this can happen just with a clerk's signature. And while 3 150-person events per year and weekly 25-person events is already bad enough, with small increases per year after a decade or two, that would be absolutely enormous in terms of the amount of disturbance. The foundation has also said that they want to hear our feedback and make their proposal better over time. But as I've seen the proposals change, to me, it's actually even gotten worse over time. For instance, in one of the initial proposals, they said that there would only be non-amplified music, but that has actually been removed from the current application. And the idea that we could be regularly listening to amplified music until 10 p.m. at night in a residential neighborhood when our son goes to sleep at 7 p.m. is outrageous to us. The special exemption criteria states that exemption should only be given if the appropriate use of neighboring property will not be substantially or permanently injured. And from our perspective, our neighboring property would be substantially and permanently injured. Our property is literally 20 feet from 6 Opening Hill. And how close this property is to the neighbors is completely different to the other comparisons that have been suggested. I know we just heard about how the Glass's house is on 50 acres, the country school is on 23 acres, Mercer by the Sea is on 33 acres. Not only is this on 6 acres, but all the buildings are right on the corner of that 6 acres, right across from our house and our neighbors' houses. The events there will feel like they're in our backyard. Please deny the application for a special exemption, protect our family and the neighboring property, protect our town, and protect the reason why people want to move here to Madison, which is integrally tied to its residential zoning. Thank you.
Peter Page, 15 Norton Town.
Majority of what I was going to say has already been talked about, so I will keep it very brief. To me, this whole application is about entitlement. And the foundation is entitled to the house, the glass house. If they'd like to move it to the proper location, I would suggest that. They are not entitled to damage the quality of life negatively of the neighbors. And I've seen this firsthand with my mother, who lived about 15 miles from here. And her last 15 years of life were absolutely damaged by light and noise of something that happened very similar to this. Someone got on the zoning board that had money, became a state representative, built a complex, got a special exception, built a complex, and she went to bed every night with tears in her eyes. So I urge the commission to think about what they're doing when they make their decision and deny it.
Okay, Marco from 85 Norton Town Road. I can't pronounce your last name based off of your spelling, so if you could just clarify that when you come up, thank you.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Marco Policio, 85 Norton Town Road, Madison. Most of, what people have said, I in complete agree with. I just want to let it be known I'm against the foundation. I'm against this whole thing. It doesn't make much sense to me. And quite simply, it's more about my kids. I have a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old. Traffic on Norton Town to Opening Hill already with just local traffic is aggressive. And if this were to go through, it's not become a highway and won't be safe. I just wanted to come and support, our neighbors, and I appreciate what everyone has prepared and talked about prior to me. Thanks.
Subir Roy Shootery? Close? Subir here?
Yes.
Here, okay, thank you.
Hello, thank you for giving me the time to speak. I have a few prepared statements and I'll try not to repeat what the others have already said. My name is Shubir. I've been a Madison resident for about 30 years and live on Manzoni Farm. The exact address is on the sign-up sheet. And I call it a little piece of heaven. My children were born in Madison, educated in our public school system, and I'm thankful to the town for making us feel at home. And we in turn feel responsible for caring for and preserving the outlook and personality of our neighborhood in Madison. We, the community, have created the ambiance, the respectfulness, the family friendliness, and most importantly, provide the revenues that support our town. The attendance today at this meeting and the last two meetings show how much we care for this community. I have not seen any Tremaines express their passion for their neighborhood, only for their mission. The Tremaine Foundation first profited by selling the land they owned in the area. And now they wish to monetize the character of our neighborhood and destroy the charisma that we have built. The Tremaines claim they are a philanthropic foundation. If you look up the meaning of the word philanthropy, you will find it says to improve the quality of life. Not a single neighbor is in favor of the transition of this property to a Barnum and Bailey headquarters. How can those afford that? We heard the traffic study results sponsored by the Tremaine Foundation in the last meeting. The takeaway they would like us to believe is that by removing a few trees and bushes, the road would be safe. You just heard Mark go up. Every time I drive by his house, I watch out for his dog or his kid to make sure they're not near the street. You think somebody coming from outside would watch out for that? You know, we who organize annual trash cleanup along Opening Hill Road and walk on these roads know that we see with our ears. We hear a car long before it can be seen, and we take evasive action, even at 25 miles per hour. Removing a few trees and bushes will not solve the problem. Then there was the property values assessment presented by the Tremaines in the last meeting, which was equally irrelevant. If I had sufficient time, I could prove to you how the data can be interpreted to prove exactly the opposite of what they claim. I request you to carefully review the data, and you too could debunk their assessment and proposed plans. One other thing that was recently was submitted to the town was a long letter by Gary Leonard, an architect, in support of the foundation's application, which is equally inconsequential. You know, one wonders what's in it for him. Others have spoken about environmental, economic, and safety impacts, so I won't repeat them. The planning and zoning in the town's first responsibility is to the residents, not to an outside interest trying to capitalize on our quality of life. A nonprofit has to raise revenues to spend them. Their plan to raise revenues from 6 Opening Hill is blatantly opposed to what we, the community, do here. We do not use our residences for revenue generation. We use it to preserve what is good in Madison. How many people here support the Tremaine application? A show of hands, please. There you go. The Tremaine family have been stewards of the property for a long time, and they should be respectful of the residents, just as if they were living here. Their application has a lot of ambiguous language. I'm surprised that the EDC did not see these as red flags. And also surprised by the overwhelmingly positive response from the EDC. And I hope that the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission does their due diligence to nix this application. We are a very strong community, and this event has brought us closer. We will fight to preserve our neighborhood, even if it takes years. Thank you for taking the time.
Joanne Arundel, 35 Kachina Way.
I'm Joanne Arundel of 35 Kachina Way. My husband and I and our 3 kids have lived there for the past 25 years with original owners in that neighborhood. And I completely agree with everything that's been said, and I oppose to the special exception. The Tremaine family closed on 6 Opening Hill Road in February of 2023 and immediately considered itself above the tax laws by purchasing the property through their foundation. In 2 years, this amounts to $38,000 that the town of Madison has lost in revenue. And how is the town making up for this? Through increases in my taxes and your taxes. This spring, the foundation again considered themselves above the law by requesting a special exception from the residential zoning regulations. At the last meeting, they presented studies in support of their application. If you read carefully through these reports, you'll clearly see that the findings are in contrary to their wants. And why? Because what they're proposing does not belong in a residential neighborhood. I wanted to focus on the impact study, as many people have mentioned. Now, my background is in scientific research, so I think I could speak a little bit about the validity of the study, and this study is simply not valid. As others have pointed out, the study selected 3 schools to generate their data. What the Tremaine Foundation is proposing is much different than a school. Schools are not open year-round. Schools are closed on the weekends. Schools require background checks of all their employees. But let's assume, because nothing like the Tremaine proposal exists in residential neighborhoods in Connecticut, schools were the best option. The study presented median selling prices of homes in inconsistent locations around the 3 schools. Median prices don't mean anything by themselves. To clearly determine the impact of the school, we need to examine the values of the homes in a period of time before the school was built and after the school was built. It's the percentage of change that is the key piece of information. What was the rate of change of the home values before the school was built and after the school was constructed? And how does this compare with the home values that are further away from the school? Those were the questions that needed to be asked and the study conducted. Yesterday, the foundation made available an addendum to the impact study using the Mercy by the Sea Center. Right location, wrong study, again. What was located in this property about 7 or 8 years ago? The original Our Lady of Mercy School. How did the property values change after the school was demolished? That's the question that should have been asked. It's the perfect control for the study, and all studies need a control. Are the residents now finding less noise because there are no buses going in and out of the school? Are they seeing enhanced safety because now they don't have cars speeding down the street with parents trying to get their kids to school on time? I'm sure that these residents are now enjoying the peace and quiet of no school, no buses, increased safety, and fewer cars, and probably an increase in their home values. So, and this leads me to the Mercy by the Sea. As someone had mentioned earlier, this is a religious spiritual center. People come here for the quiet and peaceful surroundings to contemplate, think, and revitalize their souls. This is the exact atmosphere that we're trying to preserve here tonight in our neighborhood. We all purchased our homes where we did because of the peace and quiet that the residential neighborhood offers. Now, since the Tremaine application has been made, the Planning and Zoning Commission has received a letter from dozens of medical experts attesting to the injuries that had been sustained near 6 Opening Hill Road over the years. There's a petition with hundreds of signatures insisting that you uphold the residential zoning regulations of Madison without exception. Your department has uploaded more than 100 of letters from Madison and Guilford residents insisting that you uphold the zoning regulations. And despite the musical chairs that has been played with the meeting dates, you've had 2 large rooms full of attendees plus Zoom attendees demanding that you uphold the residential zoning laws of Madison. And as a taxpayer who just wrote a check for $9,000 for half of my tax bill to pay for the town and school services for me and the Tremaine Foundation, I too demand that you uphold the zoning regulations of Madison. Do the job for which you are commissioned to do. Do not let anyone put themselves above these regulations and insist that the regulations don't apply to them. Thank you.
Jenny Mays, 87 Randy Drive.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jenny Mays. I reside with my family at 87 Randy Drive. I have no connection to the neighborhood. The reason I decided to get up and speak is because we moved to Madison just a few years ago, partially escaping a development circumstances similar to this, meaning development in the midst of the residential area. And I thought probably some of the observations that we accrued during our 20 years of that process may be useful. I also think that it might be useful for you all to hear from a taxpayer at large rather than a neighbor. And so the first point I would like to make is that the creep is real. We moved in our neighborhood, say 20 years, and this is when zoning changes were made. And over the 20 years, human activity changed, everything changed. What was intended by the allowances made a quarter of a century ago did not matter more. Every new application, and the new users were obviously coming under special permit, was called in our town, special exception here. Every next one was less and less compatible with the residential neighborhood. And unfortunately, in the end of that, we needed to pack up and go, say goodbye to the 20 years of our memories, take a financial loss and leave. Now, I strongly believe that the good men and women of the Planning and Zoning Commission 2 decades ago, when they introduced the changes, they did not intend to inflict financial loss on our family or our neighbors, or cause us mental anguish and displacement. But unfortunately, that's what happened. And so as any growing organization and successful organization, unfortunately, fortunate for the organization, but it will grow. So Tremaine Foundation will grow. It will come with expanded requests. The same process will take place. It's just like the law of nature. Many people refer to fluidity of the current application, but imagine 10, 20 years from now, it will be different people, not you. And they will look at whatever, in case it does get approved. They will not look at it as this is it. They will look at it as a starting point of anything else. We witnessed it for 20 years, unfortunately. Another creep is geographical. So I think neighbors referred to that, is that if something is approved for a certain location, there will be no grounds for you to deny this under the same circumstances in other neighborhoods. So it will make every residential neighborhood in Madison, unfortunately, a target for, tax, whatever tax status for a tax exempt organization is, which is not a concern. But the major creep I see in this application is that it expands the meaning of what was originally intended by the Madison regulations. If we look for the precedents of what is present in rural zone right now and can be qualified as educational or nonprofit organizations, you can see a country school, you can see congregational church. And the difference that strikes you immediately is that those are organizations that are embedded in the community and serve the community. This is the difference. It's like your tax-paying status. You need to be in the state for 50% of the time to be considered a resident of that state. So in the foundation, case, if we look at the turnover or whatever, 4 million they distribute, if, say, not everything, 3/4 was serving Madison residents, it would be consistent with the churches and the schools that are present in that area, because they do serve educational and spiritual needs of the community, and churches do charitable work that service the needy of this community. And it makes total sense. It saves the folks to hike downtown for their needs. That's logical. So that made me to circle back to the regulations, and neighbors here referred to 4.4. That states very, very clearly under the title, consideration in granting or denying special exception. The Madison Planning and Zoning Commission shall grant a special exception permit only if it shall find that, point A, the proposed use is permitted, no problem, and the applicant's consultants made the whole presentation in this regard. Point B, the public convenience and welfare will be substantially served, and the appropriate use of the neighboring property will be not substantially or permanently injured. I've noticed that majority of applicants' presentations, in response obviously to residents' comments, were concentrated on the last part, that neighboring properties will not substantially or permanently be injured. But assuming, whatever listed first has more importance, through you, Madam Chair, is there a package that has quantifiable materials on the public welfare that will be met by that application, financial impact, services brought to the community? Am I missing a piece of information? It's a question.
It's a good question. You're over your time limit, I'm afraid.
10 minutes?
5 minutes.
Oh, I thought it was 10 minutes, I'm sorry. So,
We'll take that as a rhetorical question?
No, it's a real one, because you could write it. I am a taxpayer at large. I have no interest, I feel the pain of the folks here, but I am just a taxpayer. There are negatives, there are benefits. I see the draw on town's resources, correct? But is there something for me to review for the applicants to try to gain the support of wider community in Madison, maybe?
I think it's a question for the applicants, but
Madam Chair.
I think you need to wrap up.
Right. Am I going to answer?
All the information is available on the website.
So there's nothing additional.
All the information is available.
And you, sir? Robert Langford.
Okay, we're gonna ask you to step aside and let someone else speak.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Susan Whipple, 16 White Birch Road.
Hi, I'm Susan Weibel from 16 White Birch Road. Also somebody who's not living in the direct area, but has been a longtime resident since moving in at the age of 4 in 1969. Love living here, raised my family here. We're not planning to leave anytime soon because we love it. And I still have a lot of family here. Anyway, I have an inquiry, kind of a related question. First is, I'm very curious, what is the status of the proposal from Tremaine Foundation to donate funding and in-kind services to offset the negative town cost of no taxes paid and costly use of community services when needed? What's the status of that whole piece? I've been reading about it, I've been following it.
That the applicant can respond to, please. No, you can do it. Say that you're.
So so maybe I'll just kind of caveat this one. The last I've read was that, they were like, we have these great ideas, we're gonna offset the cost to the town and no taxes and services with some projects and funding for other things, but it was sort of nebulous, there was nothing defined about it. So what is that status now as far as being an actual list of things?
Is that developed any further since then?
So the way the process works here is you're asking your questions really of the applicant, not us, and they have a chance to respond to all the questions that are being raised.
Okay, so I guess I could just leave that question out there, but it is a question. I think I've heard it brought up a couple more times, so I know all residents in this town are going to be concerned with their tax impact from this. And then the follow-up question is, would there be an initiative to create a written legally binding agreement around these verbal promises to ensure these suggestions will not only be followed up on, but have an associated timeline that benefits the town and a financial worth greater than or equal to the lost tax dollars of the property? I think these are just responsible concerns, and we all need to have this information. And I think that, you know, the tremendous work that you guys have done, I've also been involved in lots of town government and volunteer services. I know what it takes. But those are some real questions that I think do need to be addressed and appropriately within the town residents. So,
Madam Chair, I'm just gonna cut across and turn the air conditioning up slightly because I see everyone shaking again. I turned it down because it's warm, but I just wanted to give everybody a little bit of dial it back. We are adjusting here. Sorry. It works at least to cool down. Okay, John Fecky of 186 Opening Hill Road is next. And I believe he's in.
Good evening, John Feggy, 186 Opening Hill Road. I've lived in Madison with my wife, Lisa, for about 35 years. I'm opposed to the Tremaine Foundation's application for all the common sense and legal reasons outlined by Attorney Pellegrino and many of the citizens here tonight. You know, the Tremaine Foundation sure sounds like a special interest commercial developer to me, who spent a whole lot of money trying to persuade the Planning and Zoning Commission to get what they want. What they want is to take away the rights, the quality of life, and the pursuit of happiness of the taxpayers and residents in Madison. The commission has a responsibility here tonight. Is Madison going to be governed by the people and for the people? Or is it going to be run by special interest and big money? Do the right thing, protect the future and safety of Madison citizens, deny the application for the Tremaine Foundation. Thank you.
Lisa Fecky, 186 Opening Hill Road.
Good evening, Chairwoman Snow and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Lisa Fecky. I reside at 186 Opening Hill Road with my husband, John Fecky. Thank you for the opportunity to offer a couple of very brief comments and observations. Honestly, I don't think there's much more to say about the Foundation's request for what I would term a special treatment permit. If you wore our glasses, you would see things from our neighborhood's perspective. You would see that this proposal attempts to wedge a very large round peg into a square hole. Those who live in the area or travel on Opening Hill frequently have real-life experience with the perils of the roadway. Most recently and graphically depicted by the car that collided and overturned on the crumbling bridge abutment in front of 6 Opening Hill Road. I've personally been run off the road by a speeding vehicle while running and tore ligaments in my ankle. I'm one of the lucky ones. The long and short of it is, the paid consultants haven't seen or experienced these events, and hence they won't appear in any studies. But I assure you, they are real. My point is, this proposal is a direct threat to the safety and security of those who live and travel along Opening Hill, one of 3 major north-south arteries between the interstate and Route 79 in town. And I believe if we, as citizens and taxpayers, are owed one thing from our government, it is an assurance that it will protect our safety and security, our life and property at all costs. The regulations require it, so all the commission must do is enforce them. In short, the foundation's request is incompatible with the character of the neighborhood. It is unsafe, it is unwanted, and it sets a troubling precedent for this town. It is my hope that as the town begins drafting the final plan of conservation and development for the next 10 years, that it lives up to its pledge of sustainability for both current and future residents. Turning large parcels of residential land over to out-of-town nonprofits for commercial development is not a sustainable business model. And it puts the interests of non-taxpayers ahead of those of us who live and pay taxes here. And finally, as an aside, some of us who call Madison home would prefer to remain under the radar than to be put on a map. As this experience tells us, maps can attract unwanted attention. We urge rejection of this proposal in its entirety. It's nothing but pixie dust. Thank you for your time.
Madam Chair, the remainder of the names and the in-person attendees have spoken. I just wanted to give an opportunity if there was anybody online who has not yet spoken. If you wanted to raise your hand and be heard, we could go through some of those attendees as well before we get into everybody who's already had a chance to speak. Okay, doesn't look like anybody has their hand raised. Okay. So that would bring us to Bruce Lockhart at 24 Indigo Trail.
Can I just ask how many people are online to have a way of finding that?
We have 30 online attendees.
30 online attendees? Okay. I didn't ask last time. You all know me a little bit, I guess. I won't take a lot of your time this time. Just a photograph quick to look at. I'm sort of the guardian of my stretch of Madison. I watch out for the river and the safety of the area. Well, you all know the little old man that's in your neighborhood that's retired, doesn't have much to do, so he takes on the responsibility. I keep an eye out for my neighbors who work all day long. I pick up the trash on Opening Hill Road, I pick up the trash in the river. And I try to take care of the animals who roam the woods, deers, snapping turtles, rabbits, raccoons, bears, birds, and now a new family of foxes. I can also watch out for suspicious people who drive up and down the neighborhood, casing the neighborhood out. I wave to them and then they move away. I walk a mile in both directions on Opening Hill Road with my 2 dogs. And over the years, I have picked up a great deal of trash while trying not to get run over with by people doing 50 miles an hour. It has consisted, the trash has consisted of quart liquor bottles, stolen wallets, which I call the police on, beer bottles, food containers, small liquor bottles, and bits and pieces of cars and trucks, and even furniture they dump on our street. In other words, I'm doing what their grandfather had a sign. And what did he have a sign? Keep the land, protect the river, help the animals, and no commercial businesses. Why do you think their lawyer broke the proposal into 2 separate pieces last time? Taking off the strip of land on Indigo Trail from the other section that they first proposed. It's because that piece has the covenant that the grandfather put on it. If they kept it in all of the 6 acres, then the covenant would then apply to the 6 acres. So that's why they broke it into 2 sections. Not because they're just good people and want to make us all happy. As with all my neighbors, I helped the former neighbor from 6 Opening Hill Road with any maintenance that she had that she asked me to help. As a single mother with a wonderful child, I watched out for their well-being. I know every inch of those buildings, and they are full of so many building code violations. It makes the old general's house that was torn down look like a resort center. Dry rot, termites, structural safety in question, hazardous glass walls of all, and it's all just been rotting away for years. This is not a farm, but a house torn into many different sections. I helped, with my knowledge of the house, after working on it for 20 years, with the Bank of America, trying to stabilize it for sale. They could not even find a well or septic system, but found so much biohazard mold, they wore spacesuits with oxygen to work in the inside of the house and tore out a lot of its original walls. It needs to go and make room for new housing to increase our tax base. And some of them on the Tremaine Foundation have even said they may have to take down the barn or the house. Here's a photo in front of you that I just passed out. It's a parcel of land on Route 1 that you all know and you see every time you come into Madison from the south. If they love Madison so much, buy that and you'll have all you need in a commercial zone, parking, land, exhibition space, and even an old intact Victorian beauty that's crying out for help. There's a piece that they could buy. There's the piece that they could help Madison with. I've been lied to, starting with Hunter Tremaine, right to my face, after introducing myself to him, saying, I will watch the property for you, and he even gave me his private phone number. He told me they did not know what they would do with the property, even though they've been planning it for months, laying the groundwork with a donation to the Arts Council, asking people to lunches, meeting with various town people in town hall. So do the right thing and just say no. Better you side with the laws of Madison than with outsiders who don't live here, have no intention of living here, and only wish to make money from this site. Talking about money. When they sold everything, they made $100 million. That's a lot of money. So you would think with that kind of money, they would increase how much money they have in their endowment. They now lost almost 40% of their money. And how do you lose 40% of $100 million in the greatest stock market boom in the history of the United States? If they can't even manage their endowment, how are they going to manage to run this venue? So make no mistake, it is not anything other than a site to make money. It has never been about Madison. It has always been about making money for their tax-free foundation. Madison makes no money from this. It is only about them, and it's always about them making money at our citizens' peace of mind and the quality of their home life. Do the right thing and vote, and then be able to vote no, and then be able to sleep at night. Thank you very much.
Brittany Bodrin, 188 Opening Hill Road.
Good evening. My name is Brittany Bodrin, and I live at 188 Opening Hill Road in Madison. My fellow tax-paying Madison residents, neighbors, and friends have worked hard to provide meticulously researched, incontrovertible evidence that the Tremaine's application and intentions are completely wrong for Madison. The Tremaine's goals at 6 Opening Hill Road would benefit no one but themselves and would cause only harm to Madison residents. And no matter how many times the Tremaines backpedal and tweak their haphazard, self-contradictory, and disingenuous application, the only consistent theme running through all of their desperate revisions is that they plan to build a commercial revenue-generating event venue under the guise of an arts education center. The Tremaine application should be viewed as a wolf in sheep's clothing. At this point, after all of the evidence presented, if the Tremaine application were to be accepted, the only conclusion that could be made is that the commission has been compromised. Please do the right thing and protect your hardworking, tax-paying residents, the safety of their roads, and their home values. Thank you.
The last remaining speaker I have is Attorney Pellegrino, unless there's anyone else in the audience who would like to be heard, both online and in both of our rooms.
Can I ask a simple, quick question? May I? My name's Jeffrey Capone. I live directly across from 6 Opening Hill Road. I think you saw me last week and probably have read the dozen or so letters I've written. Where are the Tremaines? We're here fighting for our property and the applicant's family isn't here. Where are they? They're at their homes in Fairfield. They're at their homes in North Carolina. They're not
The
here.
applicants are right here. They will be
The
responsible.
family is not here.
Okay, I hear you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Pellegrino?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I have a PowerPoint and if you can let Rich share his screen, I can run through it quickly for you. As he's getting it up, I wanted to just mention the quality of so many of the public speakers. They've kind of taken the wind out of my sails, so I think I'll go quicker because they really covered these points that I wanted to make. And I was planning to focus primarily on the new information that was provided since I spoke to you the first night, the 3 reports, 3 plus the addendum. So I'll just say next, Rich, you just move on. The applicant submitted a zoning compliance and use analysis performed by SLR. Just wanted to rebut a few of the things that they mentioned. Next slide. They're seeking a special exception under the philanthropic, educational, recreational, religious use section of the reg, and as they mentioned, it's philanthropic is not defined in the reg. Next slide. And they claimed and provided you with all of these reasons and definitions that they submit substantiates their utilizing that section of your regulation. I've provided to the contrary what reality is. In this case, reality is that charging experienced guests and not giving or receiving aid is not promoting human welfare or social reform. Hosting 150-person events is not giving or receiving aid, nor is it promoting health or social reform. They failed to say how any of the uses or events in the site will function in a philanthropic manner. And we would suggest that just because they are a non-for-profit organization does not mean the proposed uses are per se philanthropic. They've also failed to explain how these uses are educational. The art is gone. Next slide. They claim they want to protect scenic resources and historical and archaeological resources. In reality, their plan calls for unsightly parking lot and porta potties, the removal of trees and plantings to establish sightlines for traffic in and out of the site. And it's unclear how this project protects any historical resources because the existing site has no historical significance. Next slide. Parking compliance. They claim they only need 11.5 spaces. They originally provided 12, 4 of which are in the front yard. Then at the last meeting, they added a new 12-car overflow parking lot, which is not meant to provide parking that is required under your regulation. In reality, they're woefully short of the required parking spaces, 38. Their own traffic report assumes that 12 cars would frequent the site for the meetings. They have no compliant spaces provided for service vehicles for the events. And their inability to manage, by their own suggestion, a robust parking enforcement plan with the help of your police department, their failure to do that, which is likely, will negatively impact the neighbors and, more importantly, put lives at risk. Next slide, Rich. The plan suggests that they should minimize character detractions. In reality, they will be introducing significant detractors to the neighborhood and the environs with their rural settings and residential uses, with a corporate headquarters with large events and constant ingress and egress of vehicles. Next slide. They claim they're going to retain undeveloped land and encourage economic development. In actuality, they're going to put a parking lot and expand this lot, both in scope and in intensity. And they're going to take tax dollars off your tax roll, which right now is $18,000 per year. Next slide. Conserve energy and water. What are they going to do? They're going to add a massive septic system. They're going to need to drill a new well, and the Neck River, which is located on the site, will be subject to potential contamination and negative impacts. Next slide. Does it support community pride and spirit? Well, the outpouring of the sentiments that you've heard from the last 3 public hearings is clearly no. Does it service community needs? Someone commented on that, I thought, quite eloquently earlier. No, it's not like a church or a school who's serving your children or parishioners who live in the community. They're serving their own needs, not the needs of the community. Next slide. The traffic issue. When we were here, we conservatively projected that the project would generate 8,434 new vehicles in and out of the site each year. From reviewing their report, it seems like we were actually conservative. Based on their own numbers, it looks like the actual trips to and from this site would be more like 10,000 per year. Next slide. This one's already been covered. I won't dwell on it, but the report was eerily silent on pedestrian, cyclist, and wildlife safety. And you've heard testimony, abundant testimony, that you already have dangerous conditions out there. And when you add 10,000 new vehicle trips, many of which would be commercial vehicles serving these events, you have significantly increased the risk and put these people's health and safety at risk. Next slide. Inability to access the site. We hired the civil engineering and consultant firm of Nathan L. Jacobson and Associates out of Essex to analyze and provide turning movements for various vehicles needed to service the site as proposed by the foundation. The results of that study further support your denial of the special exception for public health and safety reasons. Next slide. The first vehicle that they how does this work? I gave them the site plan. They have a computer program where you put various vehicles into the program and you run the vehicles through the site to see if the vehicle can maneuver the driveways and parking areas. They first used the fire department's 100-foot, it's actually 45 feet, but they call it the 100 SPH fire rescue vehicle. These are a little, and they provided me with the drawings and the commentary that is on the right-hand side. And I'll provide you with, they kind of lost a little bit in the translation from the computer model into the PowerPoint, so I'll send you those separately. But here's what they say: traveling northbound on Opening Hill Road west of the subject, then turning into the driveway, the fire truck will veer into oncoming southbound traffic in the southbound travel lane. Obviously, you're trying to swing a 45-foot fire truck into that little driveway. You can't do it without coming outside of your lane to get the vehicle to attempt to enter. The vehicle cannot clearly enter the driveway without damaging surrounding vegetation, taking out the mailbox, and driving over the median. The vehicle then attempts to travel counterclockwise around the parking lot, swinging into the proposed parking stalls. So if there's cars parked in those 4 illegal spaces in the front of the building, the fire truck can't get through, okay? Assuming nobody's there and they can get their vehicle in and out, and they go back onto Opening Hill Road, again, they have to swing out into the lane of oncoming traffic in that lane. Now, maybe they want to pull into a new driveway where they can go 350 feet to access some emergency in the unlit proposed parking lot that has jumped itself onto the plan with absolutely no detail for you to determine whether the lot in and of itself is a public health and safety concern. And I would suggest without lighting it is. Same thing with those porta potties they're going to stick back there. There's no provisions for lighting for those porta potties. So your guests are going to wander back there in the dark, hopefully to find the porta potties to come back to the event. It's crazy.
Attorney Miller, you're on 10 minutes now, so.
Okay, I'm almost done. The fire truck can't get into that driveway because of the telephone pole and the width of the driveway. Even if it couldn't turn around back there. Next slide. The same is true for a box truck, a 30-foot box truck that would service the site, same issues. Next slide. Same issues for minibuses. These minibuses are going to have difficulty getting in, which is going to cause minibuses to queue in the road. I'll just briefly show you a few photos. Next slide. I'm going to run through these quickly. Mr. Lockhart will provide you with pictures for all of these photos, so you'll have them. They show the blind curve. Next slide. They show distances for queuing or lack thereof for vehicles as they come around that blind corner. There's only about 195 feet till you hit that driveway. Next slide. It shows in more detail how once those buses and fire engines are trying to cross the bridge, another car could not pass going southbound. Next slide. Some of the trees that they want to tear down, many of which, next slide, are in the wetlands to clear or try to clear sight lines. Next slide. That's another tree. Next one. Here's evidence on the other side of the street where 2 cars are trying to make the turn. One car goes over the line, so the other vehicle is forced to go onto Mr. Cohen's property to avoid a head-on collision. This is the kind of situation that is being dealt with every day down there. And finally, next slide in the photos, that's where the new driveway is going to go. That's the telephone pole That's the extended length of the driveway that none of those vehicles will be able to get into, and none of those vehicles who are able to get there in the dark and during the evening are going to be able to turn around. Next slide just shows that driveway and its proximity to Indigo Lane. Next slide. I'm not gonna comment on the impact studies because I think that horse has been beaten silly. I would note that the addenda filed yesterday is equally as unpersuasive as the original report. Next slide. Much more compelling is the email from Bonnie McNamee, a leading realtor in Madison for 37 years, who, based on her experience, states that in fact this use would have a negative impact on property values. And I think there's a number of other ones. I think a Kathy Lynch just filed one yesterday saying the same thing. Next slide is just some additional considerations related to real estate values that you could look at. And finally, in conclusion, next slide. There was a good question answered, can you vote no? And the answer is absolutely. In fact, the burden of proof is on the applicant to show that they meet the special permit criteria. They bear that burden, okay? It's true, you have to cite reasons for a denial, but believe me, this record, the record that's before you, is replete with plenty of evidence that you can rely on and deny this application on numerous factors, not only based on the use, which I don't think meets the regulatory scheme. Again, the application, as I said the first night, is taking a mile an inch at a time. That's what they're trying to do. They haven't even closed the public hearing, and this application has changed and increased from what was originally suggested to you in the first night. So the creep has already begun, and we're not even out of the public hearing. The plan is ill-conceived from the start. It just doesn't work, and you are well within your purview in denying it, and that's what you should do. Thank you.
Anyone else, Erin?
I have no one else on the sign-up sheet, so,
I'm thinking we need to take a break.
yes. And 5-minute recess.
Would you be prepared to?
I think we could take a longer break because the report that I just saw Attorney Pellegrino present, I did not see. I had hoped tonight that we would finish hearing from everybody, including Attorney Pellegrino, and take the information and respond to it, which I would be prepared, our whole team will be prepared to do in one more session of meetings. I'm requesting, and I don't think it will be long. So I am requesting and at the same time granting an extension to the commission that we will move to the August 15th meeting, continue to the August 5th meeting, at which point we'll be prepared to rebut and sum up our research, if that's okay.
That sounds reasonable. And Erin, I don't think we have too much on the agenda for August 15th.
Just the Winter Club, which is on.
Yes.
We have no new applications received. So there's nothing else scheduled aside from 221, or 251, excuse me, Boston Post Road.
I don't know where we are in terms of days and timing, but
I have calculated where we are with timing in terms of how many days of extension I can grant, or the applicant can grant. By my calculation, I did discuss this with Ms. Mannix, we have until August 24th to conclude the hearing. So we wrap up on August 15th, well within the time period that I'm allowed to extend.
I'm a little concerned that we would have a chance to absorb everything you're telling us and then deliberate.
But once we close the public hearing, you have a 65-day period
Exactly.
to deliberate, so, that,
Gives us,
yeah, that wouldn't, my continuing to August 15th isn't going to.
the clock starts from that.
Yeah, it's not gonna decrease your time.
Good. Yeah, of course. Then I'm okay with that.
I am too.
So I need a motion to continue the public hearing to August 15th. Vote, second. Any further discussion? Favor? All right. We still need a break.
Well, you just have minutes, I think.
Yeah, we just have minutes. You're right.
So, I would just ask for
I'm
a
gonna
copy.
email it to you tomorrow.
Yeah. The commission just still has a small bit of business to do, so if conversations can go outside of this meeting room, they can continue. Thank you.
So we've already mentioned 251 Boston Post Road is our next meeting. 15th, and then let's move to the minutes.
Yes.
Okay, the July 18th, commission meeting, members present, announced, suppose of Reinhardt, and Snow. Any edits or corrections?
Raquel, I'm sorry, Raquel cannot hear anything, taking our card, so if we can, yes, thank you. Okay, Raquel, can you repeat that, John? Thank you for Raquel.
On page 2 of the minutes, the last paragraph, it says that the town engineer agrees that it's a safe exit due to the limited site. I think it should be that the town engineer disagrees. Stonewall Lane is a safe exit.
Yeah.
So again, page 2, very last full paragraph.
Harris.
Y'all get that?
Yes.
Other than that, I don't see anything else. Let's see, vote to approve, all in favor? Okay, thank you.
I abstain.
Bob O'Connor's
I did to
abstained.
18th, is there one?
Yeah, there's a 16.
Oh,
Special meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, 60 dollars here.
that was a Tuesday?
Yes.
Tuesday, 16.
Oh. We're gonna have to postpone that for next time. 16th?
Table that one,
Table it to the
table the
16th.
16th.
July 16th, we'll hit that next time.
Do I need a motion for that? Karen?
Sure.
Can I have a motion to table the July 16th minutes for next
Second.
meeting? Second? Okay. Aaron, any comments? I have none further.
No, I have none.
Should I have a motion to adjourn?
The motion is. Today. Okay.
Should we let, which one, how should we do the agenda?
You're asking for the order of the agenda? Yes. It would be 251 Boston Post Road. That would go first.
First, and then.
Yes.
Okay,
That's.
yeah. Good.
Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Reinhardt, second. Any discussion? Favor? Adjourned at 8:30.
Wow.
Thank
By the
you.
way, this is a case in point.